Today, for the first time in a long time, I'm going to be doing an update on Daniel Larson. If you don't know who Daniel Larson is and what all he has done, check out the series I've made on him. It'll be linked in the description below, but it's also in the playlist section of my channel. It goes from the beginning of his time on the internet and of his life in general to now. There's been so much that has happened. He's like probably the not most popular lolcow, but he is one of the most popular lolcows, and people try to defend him, and they're kind of weird about it as well. And I feel like it's because maybe they don't know the story, so if you do know a Daniel defender, people that are not as informed, it's a good spot to show him. And if you're wondering why it's been so long since the last update I have made on him, it's because he was in jail, and there was not much to update on, and I kind of wish I did some stuff on, like, community tab posts, so I am sorry about that. I do feel bad. I probably should have done something, but I honestly just went on to do other things. If you like videos like these, I make videos on lolcows, internet dramas, and more. I have multiple ongoing series on my channel that are in the playlist section on my channel as well, along with the Daniel Larson series that you can go check out. So make sure to like and subscribe if you like that type of stuff. If you haven't been around here in a while, I do have a lot of content that you can watch. I'm not gonna lie, there is hours and hours of stuff that you can watch. Make sure to watch this video all the way through and use YouTube's mobile only hype feature on this video, as those are the two ways that help me out the most. And with all that said,
boy, the captain's gonna earn his paycheck today. Let's go!
Daniel Larson court timeline. Before I get into all of the court stuff, which is what this section is going to be from, March 28th of 2025 to now, I do want to say shout out to Daniel Larson Archive at DLarson Archive on Twitter. He will be linked in the description below. And shout out to Flexburger as well, because these are the two pieces of news sources that were huge in all of this and really kept people updated and gave good summaries of court documents. I will be showing the court documents, and I won't be reading them as legal speak, and some of these documents are really long, and there's already summaries of them that I'm going to be reading anyway, so there's no point of really going over those, but I will show them on the screen. But definitely shout out to these two people. The last update video that I did was on the 3rd, or was like mid-March 2025, and 2 weeks after it, basically, Daniel Larson Archive made another tweet saying this: the end of April is when the court and prosecutors will determine if Daniel is competent to stand trial. This decision is crucial as it will dictate the next steps in the legal proceedings and ultimately shape the future. If for any reason his competency evaluation does not take place, Daniel's case could be dismissed. However, this does not mean he'd be simply released. If he is deemed a danger to himself or others, civil commitment would likely follow, placing him under state supervision in a secure mental health facility. If Daniel is found incompetent to stand trial, he will remain in a mental health hospital for another 4 months. During this time, medical professionals will monitor him to determine whether his condition improves enough for him to be deemed competent. If, after this period, he is still unfit, the decision on his future will fall into the Attorney General. At that stage, the most realistic outcome is long-term institutionalization. Given the nature of this case, his mental health history, and risks associated with his release, I can confidently say there is no scenario in which he is simply let back onto the streets. Just because he cannot stand trial, that idea is completely unrealistic and ignores how these legal processes actually work. This case may be quiet at the moment, but this is not over. I will continue to track every development and keep you updated. There was a piece of information that got confirmed to be true. As you can see on the top, he says take this with a grain of salt for now, but Flexburger ended up having or knowing the source and confirmed it. These documents were posted on Reddit today by an individual claiming to be in communication with a source who has been closely following Daniel Larson's legal proceedings. According to the post, this source allegedly in contact with law enforcement and provided the documents directly. While this information remains speculative at this time, the original poster maintains that the source is credible and has reportedly not been incorrect in any prior updates. Recently released documents allegedly pertaining to Daniel Larson's legal proceedings suggest that his competency evaluation has been completed and that he has been found competent to stand trial, allowing the case to move forward. A key development, according to these documents, is the alleged addition of private attorney Jeffrey Filer, I think is how you say it, to the defense team, which may signal a shift in strategy now that Daniel's competency has allegedly been restored. Filer, known for handling serious felony charges in cases involving mental health issues and significant online attention, is said to be assisting the public defender. The documents also allegedly indicate that Daniel may soon be transferred back to Colorado as this case progresses. The court is allegedly expected to review the competency evaluation, which could unfold in one or two ways, either accepting the evaluation without a hearing or scheduling a competency hearing if there is a disagreement. Daniel is deemed competent, the case would then proceed to pretrial litigation, with Filer potentially playing a more significant role in motions to dismiss charges or influencing sentencing outcomes. However, it's important to note that the authenticity of these documents have not been independently verified. In other words, the authenticity of these documents has not been verified and remains alleged at this time. He also added on things will be on screen as well here. This is not anything court-wise. This is just a document made by, I'm guessing, DLA himself, talking about like everything that was already said in this. But next, there's an update, the final for a while Daniel Larson update on June 8th, 2025, saying, as of June 8th, 2025, Daniel Larson remains in federal custody at the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners, MCFP, in Springfield, Missouri. Despite ongoing speculation, nearly daily questions, and a recent wave of misinformation, including fake accounts pretending to be Daniel circulating on TikTok, there has been no change to his legal status. Daniel has not been released, and there is no credible indication that he will be anytime soon. The reality is simple. This case is now in a long, slow phase of legal and psychiatric evaluation. Unless there's a major verifiable development, Daniel will remain in federal custody for the foreseeable future. Any claims to the contrary are not grounded in fact. If and when something substantial does occur, it will be confirmed through official documentation. I will report on it as I always have. Until then, this will serve as the final update. Thank you to everyone who has followed this account over the years. Your interests and support have been nothing short of incredible, and I truly appreciate it. For now, please refer to this statement before asking if Daniel is out, because he is not. And yeah, there wasn't really probably much to update at this point anyway, I'm pretty sure. But he made another post on July 25th, 2025, basically a month later, saying, someone on Reddit decided to write up Daniel on June 3rd, and the original poster received a letter signed Daniel Larson from the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri, which is where Daniel has been housed, confirming Daniel remains locked up. It says, Dear Daniel, thank you for being a fan. Please check out my music on YouTube and iHeartRadio. Which, I don't know why maybe this guy's name is Daniel too. I was wondering like, the entire time of me making this, I was like, why does it say that? Why does it say Dear Daniel? But maybe this guy's name is Daniel as well. And it is insane though. I don't know why there hasn't been more reports of people sending letters to him, because I feel like trolls definitely would. Maybe they just don't get through everything. I have no idea. Daniel Larson update, August 4th of 2025. This document recently emerged on the Daniel Larson subreddit. Daniel Larson is still in Springfield, Missouri, at the place he's been at. A court still has to determine if he is competent enough to stand trial. If he is found competent, he will go to trial. If Daniel is not competent, one of three things occurs. The judge can order him to stay in treatment or attempt rehabilitation to become competent again. Civil commitment. Daniel could be legally forced into a mental health treatment if he's considered a danger to himself. Others are unable to care for himself / incompetent to stand trial. Could be short or long term. This would likely come in the form of long-term commitment to, quote, state hospital. So charges could be dismissed if he's found incompetent, but they don't think he needs to become a ward of the state. I am not a lawyer, but in my non-lawyer / non-legal opinion, I do not see this occurring given that he's a danger to himself or others due to the nature of his charges. Next is a timeline of events of Daniel Larson's arrest. Some details in the summary are based on reasonable inferences. Due to restricted court filings, the information reflects known facts from the public docket, general legal procedures in federal competency cases, and an informed understanding of similar proceedings. However, it should not be interpreted as definite legal or medical conclusions. On the 4/25 of 2024, Daniel was indicted on 7 federal charges, including multiple counts of involving threats and an alleged use of threat of explosive materials. 5/1/2024, Daniel was arrested and made his initial appearance in federal court. 5/23/2024, Daniel's attorney, with support of the prosecution, requested a psychiatric evaluation to determine if Daniel was competent to stand trial. This is a legal process that assesses whether a defendant understands the charges against them and if they can assist in their own defense. 7/11/2024, Daniel's initial competency evaluation was completed. He was found to not be competent to stand trial, meaning he was mentally unfit to proceed with the case at this time. 7/26/2024, the judge ordered Daniel to be committed for up to 4 months at a federal medical center for restoration treatment, a process helping him regain competency. Daniel remained at the FCI Inglewood until being transferred. 12/27/2024, after delays, Daniel was transferred to MCFP Springfield, a federal facility that provides mental health treatment and other further evaluations for defendants in cases like this. 4/10 to 4/11/2025, around this time, approximately 4 months after his arrival in Springfield, Daniel was evaluated for competency. His defense brought in a temporary attorney who specializes in competency proceedings to seek specialized support. 4/25/2025, after Daniel's initial 4-month restoration period in Springfield, the BOP filed a psychiatric report and extension request DKT-47. The filings also included paperwork related to the withdrawal of the temporary attorney, whose role was to focus on their response to the initial evaluation. Based on these findings, Daniel was found not to be competent, promoting the request of an extension of treatment, which ultimately resulted in another 4-month restoration period. 4/29/2025, the prosecution added a second assistant U.S. attorney, Asa Mock, to the case. Asa Mock has experience handling complex cases where mental competency is a central issue. 7/22 to 7/29/2025. In July, the court filed what appears to be a preliminary competency report, DKT-53, followed by a procedural court order, DKT-54. Daniel's attorney responded on July 29th, DKT-55, likely addressing the findings of that report. While the contents are sealed, this sequence strongly suggests a follow-up on Daniel's current mental state during the second evaluation period. 8/22/2025, exactly a month later, a new psychiatric report, DKT-56, was filed. This is the official evaluation after Daniel's second 4-month restoration period. 9/8/2025, after nearly a year with no substantive filings from the prosecution, Asa Yasand Mock submitted a restricted motion, DKT-58, on August 29th, likely tied to August 22nd's psychiatric report. On September 8th, Mock filed another restricted document, DKT-59, along with a motion to restrict DKT-60. Uniquely, this motion was filed, quote, by and through the U.S. Attorney, marking the Attorney General's first involvement in the case. A noticeable shift that may signal preparation for a civil commitment proceedings under 18 U.S.C. Section 4246. Daniel Larson update 9/9/25. On 9/8/25 DKT-61, Judge Rodriguez set in a court hearing for 9/18/2025, requiring counsel to appeal in person and for Daniel to appear virtually. This will be Daniel's first court appearance since 5/1/2024, so about a year and a quarter later. This hearing comes right after the 8/2022 psychiatric report, DKT-56, that again found Daniel to be incompetent. The government's restricted filings on DKT-58 through 60, which were submitted, quote, by and through the U.S. Attorney, which are a strong sign that the DOJ may be preparing for a civil commitment move under 18 U.S.C. Section 4246. What this hearing means is that the court will use this hearing to review the latest psychiatric report and decide what happens next. Option 1. Another 4-month restoration extension if the doctors believe Daniel still has a chance of becoming competent, 20 to 25% likelihood. Option 2. Shift toward civil commitment under Section 4246 if he's deemed unrestorable and dangerous, 70 to 75% likelihood. Option 3. Release/dismissal of theoretically possible but very unlikely given charges and his history, less than 5% likelihood. Why this matters. This is the first time Judge Rodriguez will directly address the August psych report in court. It's essentially the fork in the road. Either Daniel gets more treatment or the case pivots into a long-term federal custody, section 4246. What's next? Watch the hearing closely. If the judge signals Daniel is, quote, unrestorable, the next filings we should see is BOP/AG certification of dangerousness that would trigger a full section of 4246 hearing. If she grants another 4 months, then expect another psychiatric report in early 2026. Halloween Eve of 2025, Daniel Larson's attorney has filed an unopposed motion to extend the deadline for submitting his second psychiatric evaluation to the court. Daniel Larson, who was previously found incompetent to stand trial, has been receiving treatment under the Bureau of Prisons. Recently, the court allowed him to seek independent psychiatric evaluation to determine whether continued hospitalization was necessary. According to the motion, the evaluation will be completed by October 31st, 2025, Halloween, and the defense is requesting an additional 7 days until November 4th, 2025 to provide the report to the court. The government did not oppose this request. This step marks another phase in Daniel's ongoing challenge to his incompetency ruling and move the case forward. Daniel Larson update 11/4/25. In a stunning yet hilarious turn of events, court records from November 4th, 2025, Doc 68, show a motion to withdraw attorney and accompanying order entered the same day. While the reason of the withdrawal hasn't been specified in the docket, the filing indicates a change in Larson's legal representation. In other words, Daniel's attorney quit on him, which I think this happens more than once, but we'll see. Christmas Eve 2025 update. According to a newly filed court document, Daniel Larson's federal case has entered a significant procedural stage involving his mental competency and a continued detention. The filing confirms that Larson's independent psychiatric evaluation, which the court previously authorized, was completed and submitted on November 3rd, 2025. After reviewing the procedural posture of the case, the court scheduled an evidently hearing to address Larson's restorability and whether continued confinement is warranted. That hearing was initially set for 9th of January 2026. Daniel Larson's attorney has now filed an unopposed motion requesting that the hearing be rescheduled to a date later in January due to scheduling conflicts involving the counsel and Daniel Larson's expert witness. The government does not oppose this request. The court filings referenced in the updates can be found here, which there's the actual link. Courtlistener.com apparently is what that site's called. January 22nd, 2026, courtroom minutes released. These documents are official courtroom minutes from Daniel Larson's competency hearing. They show exactly what took place in court that day, including testimony, evidence admitted, and procedural rulings. Dr. Caitlin Hansen testified for the government and was examined and cross-examined throughout the session. Both the government's exhibits and the defense's exhibits were formally admitted into evidence. The judge also questioned the witness directly. The court denied a motion to close the courtroom and ruled that Jared Scott Westbrook will continue to serve as Daniel's attorney at this time. Because the hearing ran out of time and multiple witnesses still remain, the matter was officially continued February 3rd, 2026 at 9 a.m. No decision on Daniel's competency was made during this session. The hearing is still ongoing. So as you can see, there's like a lot of things going on where Daniel is having to, like, one, you have to wait multiple months to get, of course, medicines through him, get him in there, get him more competent. I guess you can say, quote, competent, if you believe he really can be. And then also with, like, every court thing, of course, there might be delays. Some of these motions were for delays and stuff like that as well. But January 23rd, 2026 update. Bob testified in court today along with one of Daniel's former therapists. As of now, there's been no final ruling, and the outcome is still to be determined. There's also been some misinformation circulating. Some users in the Daniel Larson Reddit are claiming Daniel was found competent because, quote, certificate of competency appeared in the docket. That certificate is not new and has been in the record for some time. It does not reflect any recent determination. At this point, there is no public ruling on Daniel's current competency status. Any conclusions being drawn from that document are speculative. The witness list from Daniel Larson's evidentiary hearing, several individuals testified regarding Daniel's competency. Some of the more notable names in this list include Robert, quote, Bob Proctor, Tiffany Montano, Daniel's former therapist, and Ian Thompson, CEO of Daniel's former caretaker company. As always, the presence of a name on this list only means that they were called as a witness and provided testimony. It does not indicate the court's final determination will be. As you can see, Robert Proctor was there. It's insane. Robert Proctor, Bob, was like put in one of these court things. Like, it's actually insane. He had to be questioned. Next is January 23rd, 2026 update. There was a couple of extra updates added on to this one. Daniel's competency hearing has been continued and will resume on February 3rd, 2026 at 9 a.m. This means the hearing is not finished and no decision has been made yet. The court is still in process of hearing testimony and reviewing evidence before issuing a ruling on Daniel's competency and continued detention. 1/23/26 additional update. Hearing was continued because the court ran out of time. There's still 7 to 8 witnesses who have not yet testified, so competency hearing is far from finished. And of course, the day of February 3rd, 2026. According to a verified source who was present in the courtroom, Daniel appeared noticeably heavier compared to previous court appearances. Court records show today's session was relatively brief, lasting just over an hour. Dr. Mark Mills, the defense's independent psychiatrist, was the only witness to testify. At the defense's request, the courtroom was closed during Dr. Mills' testimony, and the judge granted that request. Following testimony, both sides delivered closing arguments, also presenting a rebuttal. No ruling was issued from the bench. The judge took the matter under advisement and indicated a written order addressing Daniel's competency will be issued. The court also ordered both parties to submit their positions regarding the speedy trial calculations by February 10th, 2026. And there's also some other additional things here. Flexberger goes on in his website, by the way, larsonlink.net, where he has multiple articles going over all the court stuff and also some extra content in there. Go check it out. Or, a small website. It's kind of nicely laid out, but either way, it's a lot better than it was before. Beforehand, I will say it looked very bad, and I did not like being on it. I didn't like looking at it, but it's been changed to a way better format if you haven't looked at it since its beginning. But anyway, there's an article he made saying why February 10th isn't guaranteed competency ruling day, based on reporting by Flexberger himself. There's been a lot of anticipation surrounding February 10th as a possible date for a ruling on Daniel's competency. But it's important to understand that this date was never guaranteed. While ruling could still be issued on that day, it is more realistic that a decision may come later in this week or even early next week. On February 10th, deadline exists because the judges request that both defense and the prosecution submit their Speedy Trial Act calculations by that date, not because the court promised a competency ruling on that day. These filings are meant to clarify how much time remains under speedy trial clock before the judge determines what happens in the next. This step is necessary because the competency ruling directly affects the future of the timeline of this case. If Daniel is found competent, the trial must proceed within whatever speedy trial time remains. If he is found incompetent, the court may authorize another restoration period, but only if the statutory timing requirements are still being met. Having both sides submit their calculations helps prevent future disputes or appeals related to the alleged violations of Daniel's right to a speedy trial. It is also noteworthy that the judge is managing multiple trials this week, which can impact how quickly a written order is finalized and released. As of February 9th, both parties have submitted their speedy trial calculations, but the judge still needs time to review those submissions and incorporate them in her witness decision. While there is still a chance that a ruling could be issued on February 10th, the absence of an update that day would not indicate or delay any problem. It would simply mean that the court is still reviewing the filings before issuing a formal order. Why Daniel's competency ruling is taking longer than expected. Many people following Daniel's cases are understandably frustrated by the lack of competency ruling from Judge Rodriguez. especially now that the hearing phase has conducted. While federal district judges often maintain hundreds of active cases at once, that reality doesn't make the wait any less difficult for those closely watching the case. At this point, the court has everything it needs to issue a decision. The judge has the full evidentiary record, expert testimonies from both sides, forensic reports and exhibits, and the speedy trial calculation she specifically requested from the defense and prosecution. However, competency determination are rarely simple or quick. That is not one sentence ruling of, quote, competent or, quote, not competent. A competency order typically requires the judge to carefully review the entire record, evaluate competing expert opinions, and apply the legal standards to the facts, and clearly routine what happens next depending on the outcome. There's also no statute that requires a judge to issue a competency ruling within a fixed number of days after hearing concludes. Daniel remains incarcerated at FCI Inglewood in Colorado, where he is no longer receiving the same level of treatment he previously had at MCFP. He is ultimately found incompetent. Each additional day without ruling may delay access to more appropriate care. It's also noteworthy that Judge Rodriguez does not currently have trials or hearings scheduled for the upcoming week. After several weeks of heavy courtroom activity, the court now has the open time that could be used to address the pending rulings, including this one. As the delay continues, frustration among observers has only grown. Regarding last week's expectations, many assumed February 10th would be the ruling date. In reality, February 10th was simply the deadline for both parties to submit their speedy trial calculations. While it was reasonable to expect a ruling shortly after all of the required information was submitted, that date was never a guarantee. Based on the typical court timeline and Judge Rodriguez's prior handling of similar matters, a ruling was reasonably expected within roughly a week after the final filings. At this point, the decision could be issued at any time. Updates will be shared as soon as an official ruling is released. And there's a TLDR at the bottom, where too long didn't read if you didn't know what that meant. Breaking news. Daniel has been ruled competent to stand trial. The court scheduled the trial to begin on April 20th, 2026, 420. This ruling means that the case will now proceed through the normal criminal trial process. More details will be shared as additional information from court becomes available. Then DLA makes several different threads. I think he makes only 2. But there's a lot of attachments in these threads. But he says, straight from the judge, a thread of documents released after Daniel was found competent. Dr. Hansen's testimony. Court filings detail testimony from forensic psychologist Dr. Caitlin Hansen regarding Daniel's mental state when he first arrived at the Bureau of Prisons Medical Center in December 2024. According to Dr. Hansen, Daniel was experiencing persistent delusional beliefs, including the belief that he was in a romantic relationship with a celebrity singer and that he himself had a celebrity status as a singer and model. Dr. Hansen testified that Daniel continued referencing this supposed relationship and conversation with both medical staff and his defense attorneys. The filing also states that individuals online reinforced these beliefs by sending Daniel messages and screenshots relating to the alleged relationship while he was in custody. According to Hansen, Daniel's suspectability... So people were trolling him from prison. But... oh my goodness, dude. Okay, Daniel's susceptibility to outside influence and tendency to downplay the seriousness of the charges raised concerns about the ability to meaningfully assist him in his defense. And down below you can see a screenshot of it. This is like a section where the screenshots hopefully are seeable, but I didn't do the full ones because there was a lot of attachments in this thread. But to go on, medication and symptom improvement. Court records indicate that Daniel began taking antipsychotic medication in February 2025 while in federal custody. According to Dr. Hansen's testimony, Daniel's psychotic symptoms improved significantly once he began treatment. Prior to medication, Daniel frequently persevered on his delusional beliefs, particularly those involving his celebrity relationship. So he was obsessed with her, only thinking about her while in jail, or in prison, which I mean, I guess was kind of expected. But after treatment began, Dr. Hansen reported that these delusions were no longer dominating his conversations, and the document states that Daniel now understands that the celebrity singer he previously believed he was involved with has no connection to this legal case. So I'm guessing he probably still believed that they were together somehow, but just that she doesn't have anything to do with this case, which is kind of funny. Like, there's just some things, there are just some beliefs that Daniel is gonna have for the rest of his life. Oh my, dude, people were sending him stuff, bro. They were trying to send him screenshots in prison, and they gave them to him probably. They're like, dude, look at it. Like, could you imagine being his lawyer and just, or like being his therapist, or the person that watches him psychiatrically, and just seeing these like papers just being like Daniel's like giving you these things like, look, I'm with her, dude, like look at these. While medication appeared to reduce his psychotic symptoms, the court continued evaluating other mental health factors as a part of the contingency determination. Long-term mental health history. Testimony presented to the court also outlined Daniel's mental health history dating back to around 2011 when he was approximately 12 to 13 years old. Records referenced in the filing indicate concerns about executive functioning and cognitive development during adolescence. The document also describes multiple instances involving self-harm behavior over the years. One report states that in 2017, Daniel was hospitalized after striking his head against a wall, damaging the wall, and threatening to harm himself during that period of emotional distress, which I think was before he was on social media. So this also was a behavior that happened before this. I think Larson leaked himself in a video because he's made his own series of sorts, also talked to some people from his early times, Daniel's early times, and apparently he did like cut, just to say it at the least as possible, I guess. He did do that type of stuff, so kind of interesting. But you never see scars on him, but he also never really has that great of a phone or that great of a camera around him to see those. And also it depends on where they're at. We've seen all of his body though, so who really knows? But either way, another reported incident in 2023 involved Daniel punching himself in the face after becoming upset. Similar behavior was also documented while he was being held in federal detention prior to his transfer to the Bureau of Prisons Medical Center. So he was doing this in like prison as well, which of course was expected. Like I could only imagine what these people had to hear every day. He was probably one of those guys that was like screaming all the time. They had to have beat him up. I really wonder. I guess we'll figure out in the future. These records were presented as a part of broader evaluation of Daniel's psychological history. This one's actually kind of interesting. Early childhood head injuries. Medical records also describe several early childhood head injuries and developmental concerns. One report states that Daniel suffered non-accidental head injury as an infant, and later incidents of head trauma were documented. Earlier psychological testing from 2007 to 2009 evaluated cognitive and adaptive functioning. So he did this himself as an infant, I'm guessing? And this is one of the things that I want to read, like one of the only document or additions to the document that DLA didn't talk about here was there are also reports of head injury / trauma. The report from 2011 states the defendant mother reported that he had, quote, non-accidental head injury around the age of 3 weeks, a seizure around 5 months, which is interesting that he had a seizure around like 5 months old, I'm guessing. Very like, I don't know. I wonder what type of, I don't think he's ever had another seizure since. But it's definitely a good question. That's something definitely to note later. Expert opinion, Dr. Mills. Defense expert Dr. Mark Mills testified that Daniel suffers from autism spectrum disorder and schizophrenia. Mills stated that while medication can reduce psychotic symptoms, Daniel's underlying cognitive impairments related to autism and borderline intellectual functioning cannot be treated. Mills argued that these cognitive limitations would make it difficult for Daniel to meaningfully assist in his defense. Car observations during the hearing. Although Daniel did not testify during the competency hearing, the court observed his behavior during the approximately 5.5 hours of testimony across 2 days. According to the filing, Daniel remained calm and quiet throughout the proceedings and did not engage in disruptive behavior. The court noted that Daniel appeared attentive, followed the exchanges between attorneys during cross-examination, and consulted with his defense counsel when appropriate. The document also states that Daniel's attorney spent more than an hour explaining the potential advances and disadvantages of being found competent. Despite this discussion, Daniel reportedly told his attorney that he preferred to be found competent so this case could proceed to trial. Change in legal representation. A separate court minute order indicates that Daniel no longer qualifies for representation by the Federal Public Defender's Office. According to the filing, substitute counsel must enter an appearance as privately retained counsel by March 9th of 2026. Once the new attorney formally appears in this case, Daniel's current counsel, Mr. Westbrook, is expected to file a motion to withdraw. This order signals a transition in Daniel's legal representation as the case moves forward towards trial. And there's a full and complete ruling on Daniel's competency thread, and we'll go over it. Page 1 of 15, Daniel versus the United States of America. In an order issued by the U.S. District Court for the District of Colorado, Judge Regina M. Rodriguez ruled that Daniel Larson has been restored to competency and is mentally competent to stand trial. The decision follows the hearings held on January 22, 2026 and February 3, 2026, which are conducted under 18 whatever to determine whether Daniel's competency had been restored undergoing treatment. During the proceedings, the government argued that Larson's competency had been restored and that he is capable of standing trial. The defense, however, argued the opposite, claiming that Larson remained incompetent and that it was unlikely his competency would ever be restored. After reviewing the evidence and testimony presented during the hearings, the court concluded that Larson has been restored to competency and is competent to proceed with the case. The document also begins outlining the background of the federal charges, noting that Larson was indicted on April 25, 2024 on 6 counts related to the use or threatened use of explosive materials, and 1 count of interstate communication of threats. Court details Daniel Larson's competency evaluation and hospitalization. The court documented continues outlining the procedural history of Daniel Larson's competency evaluations following the indictment. According to the filing, a psychological and psychiatric evaluation was ordered to determine both whether Larson was competent at the time of alleged offenses and whether he was currently capable of assisting in his own legal defense. On the 11th of July 2024, evaluators concluded that Daniel was not competent to proceed with the case and was not competent to knowingly and voluntarily waive his right to trial. As a result, on July 26, 2024, the court ordered Daniel Larson be committed to the custody of the U.S. Attorney General so he could be hospitalized in a suitable facility for treatment for a reasonable period of time, not exceeding 4 months, to determine whether his competency could be restored. Larson later admitted to the Bureau of Prisons Medical Center on December 16, 2024, where he began receiving treatment. The court received updates from the Bureau of Prisons regarding Larson's condition, including forensic psychological status reports and requests for additional time to continue treatment and evaluate whether his competency could be restored. These updates ultimately led to extensions being granted so treatment and evaluation could continue. Defense challenges competency restoration timeline. On September 18, 2025, the court held a hearing regarding the Bureau of Prisons' request to extend Larson's treatment commitment by additional 120 days in order to continue efforts to restore his competency. During this hearing, the court also granted Daniel Larson's request for a third-party evaluation and allowed the defense to seek evidentiary hearing of the issue of restorability. On November 3, 2025, defense expert Mark Mills submitted a report arguing that Daniel could not be restored to competency. Shortly after, on November 10th, Daniel formally renewed his request for the court to hold an evidentiary hearing to determine whether competency restoration was possible. Court receives evaluation declaring Daniel as competent. After Daniel objected to his continued detention, the court scheduled an evidentiary hearing to determine whether he could be restored to competency. Originally set for January 9, 2026, Daniel later requested the hearing be rescheduled, and the court moved it to January 22, 2026. On December 22, 2025, the court reviewed an evaluation from the Bureau of Prisons stating that Daniel was mentally competent to stand trial. The court then held competency restoration hearings on January 22, 2026 and February 3, 2026 under federal competency statutes. During these hearings, both sides introduced extensive evidence and expert reports. The government submitted documents including a certificate of competency, a psychological report from Dr. Caitlin Hansen, and supporting materials from Bob's staff. The defense introduced multiple psychological evaluations as well, including reports from Mark Mills, who had previously argued that Larson cannot be restored to competency. Both Dr. Hansen and Mark Mills testified during the hearings, giving competing expert opinions about Larson's mental condition and whether he was capable of standing trial. Court explains legal standard for competency. This section of the order outlines the legal standard the court must use to determine whether a defendant is competent to stand trial. The court cites section 4241E of the Insanity Defense Reform Act of 1984, which governs how a defendant can be discharged from medical custody after undergoing competency restoration treatment. Under this law, if the director of a treatment facility determines that a defendant has recovered enough to understand the proceedings and assist in their defense, the facility must file a certificate of competency with the court. The court must then hold a hearing to determine whether a defendant has been restored to competency. The court explains that the competency is determined by, quote, preponderance of the evidence, meaning the judge must decide whether it is more likely than not that the defendant has recovered enough to proceed. The order also references the Supreme Court order Dusky v. United States in 1960, which established the modern legal standard for competency. Under this, a defendant is considered competent if they have sufficient present ability to consult with their lawyer with a reasonable degree of rational understanding, a rational as well as factual understanding of the legal proceedings against them. The section concludes by transitioning into the court's analysis of expert testimony, beginning Dr. Caitlin Hansen's competency determination, which stated that Larson had been restored to competency as long as he continued his current medication regime. Dr. Hansen's evaluation, competency testing. This section of the court's analysis focuses on the testimony of Dr. Caitlin Hansen, the Bureau of Prison psychologist who treated Daniel Larson for nearly a year after the BOP Medical Center. Dr. Hansen testified that Daniel was diagnosed with autism level 1 as well as unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. During this treatment, Larson was placed on a daily regime that included antipsychotic medication. To evaluate Daniel's competency, Dr. Hansen administered the MacArthur Competence Assessment Tool Criminal Adjunction, or the MACCAT-CA, or CA, a standardized psychological test used to determine whether a defendant is capable of standing trial. The assessment measures three main areas: the defendant's factual understanding of the legal process, their rational understanding of the proceedings, their ability to work with and assist their defense attorney. According to the testimony presented in court, both Dr. Hansen and defense expert Dr. Mills agreed that Larson has a factual and rational understanding of the legal proceedings. However, the two experts disagreed on the third component: Larson's ability to properly evaluate the outcomes in this case and effectively work with his defense counsel. Dr. Hansen testified that during his time at the BOP Medical Center, Larson demonstrated an understanding of charges against him, recognizing that they are involvement of threats and could lead to penalties such as imprisonment, fines, and supervised release. Larson also showed that he understood the difference between pleading guilty and not going to trial, though Hansen noted he sometimes downplayed the seriousness of the charges. Delusions, social media influence, and medical treatment processes. Dr. Hansen testified that when Larson first arrived at the facility in December 2024, he was experiencing a delusional belief that he was in a romantic relationship with a celebrity singer. Larson frequently referenced this supposed relationship in conversations with both medical staff and defense attorney. So during these times of trying to defend himself, he would just be talking about her. That's insane. According to the report, these beliefs were reinforced by individuals on social media who sent Daniel messages and screenshots while he was in custody that appeared to support the alleged relationship. Dr. Hansen also noted concerns about Larson's susceptibility to outside influence, describing him as easily impressionable and prone to minimizing the seriousness of the charges he faces. These factors initially raised concerns about his ability to effectively assist in his own legal defense. However, at the beginning of February 2025, Larson started taking antipsychotic medication, which significantly improved his psychotic symptoms. Dr. Hansen reported that at the beginning of treatment, Larson no longer focused on his conversations on the delusional relationship and had come to understanding that the celebrity singer had no connection to his legal case. So they don't say anything about him not at all believing that they're together, just that he doesn't talk about it as much anymore. During this time in treatment, Larson participated in cognitive therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy programs at the Bureau of Prisons Medical Facility. Court examines delusions versus, quote, fantastical thinking. This section focuses on the testimony from Dr. Caitlin Hansen, explaining the difference between delusional beliefs and fantastical thinking, which became an important issue during the cross-examination. Dr. Hansen testified that delusional beliefs are a psychotic symptom, meaning they can often be treated with antipsychotic medication. In contrast, fantastical thinking is more commonly associated with autism and can be a function as a coping mechanism used to avoid unpleasant realities. Fantastical thinking is typically addressed through therapy rather than medication. According to Dr. Hansen, Larson's symptoms responded positively to antipsychotic medication, which suggests that his earlier beliefs were largely delusional rather than purely fantastical. She testifies that since receiving treatment, Larson has shown greater flexibility in his thinking and no longer fixates on the belief that he's in a relationship with a celebrity singer. However, Larson still expresses a desire to become a famous singer or songwriter, which Dr. Hansen believes may reflect some fantastical thinking reinforced by interactions with online supporters, if you want to call them that. The testimony also reviewed Larson's long-term mental health history, records dating back to 2011 when Larson was around 12 to 13 years old, indicating concerns about executive functioning and note a history of self-harm behaviors such as headbanging. These behaviors are reportedly continued into childhood. The records describe a 2017 hospitalization when Larson was around 19 after he struck his head, damaged walls, and threatened to end his own system while feeling overwhelmed. Another incident in 2023 involved Larson being taken to the hospital after punching himself in the face during an emotional episode. Court reviews Larson's cognitive testing and head injury history. This section continues reviewing Dr. Caitlin Hansen's testimony regarding Daniel Larson's medical and psychological background. Court records show that Larson had multiple incidents of self-harm and head trauma before being transferred to the Bureau of Prisons Medical Center. Larson reportedly struck himself in the face while in federal detention after becoming frustrated. The report also references early childhood injuries according to a 2011 report, and Larson's mother stated that he suffered a non-accidental head injury at around 3 weeks old and experienced a seizure approximately 5 months old. Larson also reported that he was 8 years old. His mother struck him in the head with a hammer. That would do so much damage though, wouldn't it? Like break his skull and stuff. The court reviewed earlier cognitive testing records, which show Larson underwent cognitive testing in 2007 and 2009, along with adaptation functioning testing in 2008. Dr. Hansen testifies that Larson does not meet the criteria for intellectual disability diagnosis. The standard for such diagnosis typically requires a IQ score of approximately 70 or below, while Larson's IQ evaluates average around 72. He has a room temperature IQ. Like, a literal room temp IQ. Also, he's, like, barely on the signs of, like, you know, disabled, I guess, technically. Although he basically is there. I don't know why they're not... I don't know. Although he does not qualify as intellectually disabled, Dr. Hansen testified that Larson does show signs of borderline cognitive functioning. She also acknowledges that Larson's history of head injuries could potentially worsen the cognitive abilities over time. I'm guessing something like CTE. The document then transitions to a defense expert opinion introducing Mark Mills's determination that Larson was not competent to stand trial. Key points. This is like, I forgot what the top part says. I cut it off a little bit, but this is basically what this part is about. The court rules that Larson is competent to stand trial. Here's what the judge says in simpler terms. 1. Legal standard applied. Under, whatever, the court must decide whether the defendant understands the nature and consequences of the charges and can assist properly in its defense. The judge says the government proved this by a, quote, preponderance of evidence, meaning more likely than not. 2. Court's conclusions. The court finds Daniel Larson understands the charges against him, understands the legal process, can work with his lawyer, so legally he is competent to proceed trial. The defense argument. Larson's defense argued that he should still be considered incompetent because of autism, borderline intellectual functioning, basically close to being disabled, history of traumatic brain injuries, poor frustration tolerance, risk he could become disruptive in court, possibly might retreat into fantastical thinking under stress. They argued these issues could prevent him from effectively helping attorney during trial. Court response: the judge acknowledged those issues, but ultimately concludes that they do not prevent Daniel from assisting his lawyer. Therefore, he is ruled competent. This page explains why the judge sided with Dr. Hansen, the government, instead of Dr. Mills, the defense. Mental health improvement with treatment. The court notes that Larson's mental health improves when he's in a structured environment like BOP and when he is receiving antipsychotic medication, therapy, and structured supervision. The judge also points out that older records from 2011 show the same thing. Larson improved when he was on medication and in a structured treatment. So the court believes the symptoms are manageable but not permanently disabling. Quote, competency is a fluid concept. The judge cites other federal cases explaining that competency can change over time. A person can only legally be incompetent if they are currently suffering from a mental illness that prevents them from participating in their defense. The court says Larson is not currently suffering from a condition that makes him incompetent. Court relied on two things to decide the competency. The judge relied on medical expert opinions, the judge's own observation of Larson during hearings. Competency rulings are considered factual determination, not purely legal ones. Why Dr. Hansen's opinion carried more weight. Both experts were considered qualified and credible, but the judge trusted Dr. Hansen for a more specific reason. She treated Larson weekly for nearly a year. She personally observed his improvement with medication, his behavior over time, his participation in therapy and treatment. Meanwhile, Dr. Mills only evaluated Larson once during the defense. Because of that difference in exposure, the court gave more weight to Hansen's evaluation. The judge concludes Larson's condition improved with treatment. He currently understands the legal process and he can work with his lawyer. So the court continues moving forward with the final ruling that he is competent to stand trial. The court observation on why competency was confirmed, and there's that document. There's also the document of the final reasoning of speedy trial, and the final order of the court, and then the final orders and trial date, which were for April 20th or 4/20/2026, and a potential motion to deadline of March 20th, 2026. On March 20th, 2026, though, a plea agreement was reached. A new court filing shown that Daniel, through his attorney Jeffrey E. Filer, has notified the court that a plea agreement has been reached between himself and the federal government. As a part of the filing, Daniel requesting that the court schedule a change of plea hearing, which currently proposed to take action on or to take place on April 9th, 2026 at 3 p.m. during the previously scheduled case preparation hearing, or at another time deemed appropriate for the court. This development likely means that Larson will not proceed to trial on April 20th, 2026 as previously scheduled. Instead, he is expected to formally enter a plea agreement, after which the case would not move forward sentencing phase rather than a full trial. And the trial date was set for April 9th, 2026. Federal employee incident. On January 27th of 2026, which was wanted to be talked about, specifically requested by Flexburger because apparently this situation was kind of overlooked by everyone, a federal employee gets in trouble with feds over Daniel. This is from his website, by the way. But this is a wild story on how January 27th, 2026, a federal employee lied about Daniel for clout on Reddit and got himself into deep trouble with the feds. This morning, I opened Reddit, stunned to see that the top post on r/Daniel Larson was a Ask Me Anything panel hosted by a person who claimed to be an ex-federal employee who worked with Daniel whilst in prison. Upon reading some of Gray Beretta G59's replies, yes, this is an ex-federal employee with a boy's username, some of his answers to questions were obviously fake or questionable. However, one of the head mods stated that he sent over identification, proving that he was in fact who he really was. The original poster eventually outed himself as a liar, lacking knowledge about Daniel, saying that Daniel, quote, had prior illicit substance use. General Beretta says, with prior use, as well as obvious signs of mental impairment and illness, there is not a single federal judge or chief psychologist that would say that he is mentally fit to stand trial. Is it confirmed that he has prior use? Confirmed use of illicit substance continuously. Nonsense. You're gonna lie, at least make it believable. I think there's not really been much proof of Daniel ever doing stuff. I mean, he smoked the ganja a time, which was shown before by a group of kids that he was hanging out with. Pause. But other than that, no. It is known that Daniel has never used serious recreational and is very against them. I think he's used like the ganja once though. And he's drank before, of course, but which isn't a substance. With how insultingly fake this AMA was, I need to know what the subreddit mods were sent for him to think that this guy was legit. I was able to find out the original poster sent the mods the following identification: pictures of Federal Bureau of Prisons uniforms, W-2 forms, and other employment forms. Running it through an analyst and investigator of ours, not to mention we found original poster's Facebook profile, we were able to confirm that the document he sent were legit and he was actual employee of the MCFP Springfield. So what exactly is going on? And this is a actual post of the person's uniform, but he says, with what we gathered, this former federal employee was someone who did work at MCFP Springfield as recently as 1/10/2026, but did not have access to information about Daniel like they claimed. Instead, they decided to bypass the mods with their credentials and make things up for clout. Based off the W-2 form provided, it's clear that this person was an hourly, low-level corrections type officer working part-time, picking up night shift and weekend shifts. This person was not salaried clinician who would be monitoring someone's phone calls and have knowledge about their medication/medical background like original poster claimed they did. Original poster got fired recently and was upset, not caring about the repercussions. He might have seen Daniel once or not at all. Without a doubt, the info he was sharing is not accurate. Low-level part-time employee or top-of-the-line psychiatrist, when you work for the federal government, you can't just casually leak information on Reddit. Made up or not, it's an incredibly dumb thing to do. It took multiple people on Reddit saying this for Graybeard Beretta G59 to actually realize it. He would end up deleting his entire account a few hours later. The ex-employee will be getting in trouble. The feds are 100% already aware of what he did, according to the sources who received emails about this employee. This situation also will likely contribute to us receiving less information on Daniel and his status, as well as impacting and delaying the case, so you can thank him for that. Although we didn't intend to directly accuse original poster of committing specific crimes, a source of ours who intimately understands legal issues like this came up with a list of 5 federal laws, 5 BOP policies, and 3 ethical obligations that OP likely violated. I tweeted about the incident happening, but it seemed to go over the people's heads. This incident was truly insane. Now you know about the January 27th r/Daniel Larson incident. Moral of the story, don't do what this guy did. There's also some other stuff on his website that I wanted to point out. Here's a picture of Jared Westbrook, I guess is how I'll say it. There's a picture of him, which is Daniel's attorney for the last 2 years. And then here's his new attorney, Jeffrey Filer, as well. That's basically it. Jeffrey Filer was known for being a lawyer for Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys extremist group, which is kind of funny to think about. Daniel also turned 27 while in prison, and Tina Vanderwall passed away at 53 years old. And it's kind of sad, like, I'm not gonna lie. This is, if you don't know, her mother. I don't say her name ever anymore because of what Daniel has sadly put her through now. But yeah, that's her mother, and she passed away. That's very sad. Daniel text messages leaked. Shout out to Larson Leak for these as well. He's made a few videos of his own called like the Larson File series, and there's some other spare stuff as well. And one thing was some unseen text messages before between him and his family members. I think one of them was specifically his dad. And the reason that they have this information is because Flexburger, as well as some other people, well, actually, I shouldn't accuse Flexburger of this because this is, I don't know how safe it is to say that because some people do get upset. Flexburger at least has this information from someone who is on Discord calls and close to Daniel, because Larson Leak had that whole series of the fake college era, or what did we used to call that stuff? What was the other word for era? Arc, that's what it was. But anyway, during one of those arcs, Daniel would also show off his phone screen and stuff like this would pop up. But he says, I have to go to the bank and they are closed. And someone says, Danny, I hate to say this to you because you're my son and I love you, and that will never change, but you are delusional and manic. You did this all to yourself because you don't want to follow rules. Your host home provider told you don't leave but you did it anyways. Bob has even had enough of your lies and fantasies. You need help and medication, and unless you get help, no one will listen to you. You have always been like this ever since you were 6 years old, not getting your way and hitting yourself or beating me or my mother. Yeah, the grandmom, so this adds up as well. Honestly, Danny, I've had enough of this too, and I'm terminally ill, and I don't need the stress. Get help, Danny. You are my son, and I love you. I always will love you. Get help. And so, as you see, that is his dad. And from what it looks like, his dad is terminally ill, and it's possible that he passed away at this point. Next is a bunch of cut off text messages that I don't think were ever like completely shown, but he says, yeah, and you beat my mother every day, and you went to jail because of that, and then you were put into DDRC to protect you because you can't live on your own. I was put into DDRC because I had nowhere else to go because of you, I'm guessing. My grandmother were crying every day, shut up, stuff like that. It's all kind of like cut up a little bit like you see on screen. But next, saying, arguing about the fact in front of basically everyone, this is not going to look good for you, and you're basically putting me in the middle of some nonsense. I'm not going to have this. I'm going to start a different group chat without you. You're delusional. World famous singer with a $25 million contract for a single song with Disney. You tell me things I know aren't true and get mad when I prove it not to be, or simply not believe it. You think you know the law better than me. That's delusional. You are the one on probation in violation of probation, yet you know more than me. And this was a group chat with 7 people, by the way. I don't know who these other people were. I'm guessing it's other family members, including Bob. And this, like, his dad was the only one responding for whatever reason. But Daniel says, oh, by the way, I know the lawn a lot better than you do. That's where I get the majority of my theme from. So stop arguing. Fame. That's what I meant. That's on you. I am not your grandma. I will not lie to you or accept this nonsense. I tell you it the way it is. Sorry you can't take it. If your services will not help you get a job, then you don't get a job. Why is that so hard for you to understand? Do as you are told. Follow the rules. Stop fighting against it. So some very interesting text messages. I don't know if he had any more exclusive stuff. He might have. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I also think that Daniel... It's hard to, like, I wonder if you all think he's competent to stand trial since I didn't talk about it earlier. It's very evident that he needs to be somewhere. He cannot be out in the public on his own or else he's going to go immediately homeless again and he won't take his medicine. And he'll go crazy again, he'll do the same stuff over and over. So he has to be institutionalized somewhere. I don't think he's really, if he goes back to the public, like he did before under housings and stuff like that, he's going to do more, he's going to mess up again. So I don't really think that he should be free at all, to be honest. Because he'll get a phone again. Or maybe they'll say that he's not allowed to have a phone, which is what I'm wondering, like, if they're going to say that during the sentencing, like he's not allowed to have a phone or he is. Nancy Shimer's estate. This is a article, another one made by Flexburger, of course. This was published on April 21st, and let's go over it. Let's read it. You can also check out some other articles that will, I think I'll have his website linked in the description. I'm going to try to remember to have all the links usually in the description, especially shout out to him. But yeah, let's go over this. During the April 9th hearing, we first learned about Chad Oxman, who was appointed to be Daniel's new legal guardian. Many assume that this was Bob trying to offload Daniel onto someone else, or that Oxman was court-ordered due to the federal case, which I didn't know that he actually had a legal guardian. I didn't know that he was required to have one. I knew that, like, Bob was there. I kind of thought Daniel was his own free man, but I guess not. Judge Rodriguez confirmed that Oxman was appointed in the Denver probate court and not related to the federal case. In her own words, quote, not in this matter. We've been able to exclusively confirm that Daniel's new legal guardian was actually a result of his grandmother, Nancy Shimer's trust. Let's back up, though. Daniel started living with Nancy sometime between 2010 and 2012. Nancy had a home in Arvada, Colorado, that she lived in starting in October 2012. This was where Daniel was expected to have been living during the Tennyson years. Daniel's iconic Tennyson Center KWGN interview was published in December of 2012. In present day, the home is currently valued at just over $600,000. The home was owned by the, quote, Nancy Shimer Trust. And there's a photo of the home, of course. And you can also see the past owners and stuff like that in the records that show the Nancy Shimer Trust and Nancy Shimer herself. I don't know when this post was. I never remember Daniel talking about this. But, of course, an interesting detail. Larson Link was able to obtain details about Nancy's estate court case after her passing, which included a very few interesting pieces of information. If you go to Nancy Shimer's wiki page, you'll be surprised to learn that the majority of the page is actually about a different Nancy Shimer. The real Nancy is Nancy Louise Shimer, who was born on 5/11/1943 and passed on 10/24/2018 in Colorado, where she is ultimately believed to be cremated. Currently, the wiki mentions the name of a Nancy Shimer, Nancy Jean Shimer, that includes the backstory of the incorrect Nancy. The early life section, the headstone, the obituary, her full name, etc., are actually all about the wrong Nancy, or were user generated. This led to followers of Daniel leaving comments about and pictures of Nancy Louise Shimer onto the wrong person's online obituaries. And I guess there's some proof right here, of course, but it says 2. Nancy's estate went through the Jefferson County probate court process starting in 11/16/2018, a couple of weeks after her passing. It's unclear how large of an estate she had, but we are aware that the trust sold her home for $455,000. Most notably, Golden Fiduciary Services was retained to manage Nancy's estate/trust. You'll notice the names sound familiar because Golden Fiduciary Services CEO Greg Suarez was listed as a witness and subpoenaed to testify in Daniel's competency hearing, but never did. He presumably would have testified about the financial support Daniel had access to, his past experiences with Daniel and his family, and the resources available to Daniel. Here's the picture of the witness list and how long they were there for. Golden Fiduciary Services specializes in trusts that support people with disabilities, which is why Nancy likely decided to work with them. It's unclear how the trust was structured, but we imagine that the portion was supporting Daniel's mom, Elizabeth, and some was supporting him. With Daniel's mother passing in 2024, some aspects of the trust would have been involved in Denver County probate court during Daniel's incarceration. So now we know that Daniel has a level of support coming from his grandma's trust/estate. All along, it wasn't Bob retaining filer, or however you say that, or an independent psychiatrist, or the legal guardian. It was Nancy's trust. At 12/10/25, competency relating hearing filer discusses how, quote, the trust, Nancy's trust, had hired Dr. Mark Mills, who would become the key witness and expert for Daniel's defense during competency arguments. The same 12/10/25 hearing, filer discusses how they were working on obtaining a legal guardian for Daniel. Conversation was off the record, but we know this ultimately would result in Chad Oxman being appointed within the following weeks. So now we can see the bigger picture of how Nancy's trust has continued to support Daniel. Although we don't know the full details of the arrangement, Nancy's trust is how Daniel was able to retain Jeffrey Filer as counsel, why they were able to hire Dr. Mills as an independent psychiatrist expert, and why Oxman was appointed as Daniel's legal guardian. The interesting part is that if we look back, this isn't the first time Jeffrey Filer has represented Daniel. Filer was listed as Daniel's attorney back in 2023 during Boulder/Folsom Field assault case and the 2023 incident at Walmart after music was rescued from Daniel, or the dog if you don't know. Nancy's trust has been a topic that many have debated over the years. We can confirm this does exist and that Daniel is receiving support from it. Will the trust be able to recover his fine from the federal case, which is expected to be a range of $95,000 to $10,000? It depends on how the trust distributions are handled, but it's more likely that the trust would pay the fine than Daniel making this much money from the streaming Roaring Thunder on iHeartRadio. So it does look like, the whole, I kind of remember this now after reading through it. Yeah, Daniel did have a trust. I think he did talk about it at multiple points. And yeah, now we know the actual truth of it. It did exist. It was in fact real, and it was actually helping him for a very long time. I'm guessing the trust is the $455,000 from the house instead of just actually having a home to live in. And because of that 400, near $500,000, that is under, I'm guessing, Oxman and not actually Bob. Maybe Bob is a kind of middleman in the situation where they contact, you know, Oxman or whatever for it. Very interesting, I will say. I'm kind of glad that Daniel, I think he knew, like, of course he knew, I'm pretty sure, about the trust, but I can't remember, I never really remember him talking about it that much. You know what I mean? So, this is a very, like, big piece of lore, low key. Like, it's genuinely a low Kirkuinly piece of lore that has now been more so confirmed because of this court case. But also, yeah, legal stuff, having to hire these expensive people, we can definitely assume that that estate is lower than, $400,000 at this point. Only who knows how much it truly costs, especially with a court case like this that has been long, that is federal, and everything else. GV update. This section is kind of important to me specifically to make. I feel really bad. Of course, you all know that. I refuse to say her actual full name due to all the harassment that the community caused. I, of course, always denounced it, and over time, when making this series, realized it was just not worth saying this person's name anymore. But I talked about it in a earlier segment. Her mom ended up passing away due to cancer. And after this, maybe it was during this time, maybe before she passed away or whatever, she ended up getting into snow and maybe some other things. No, like not a snow bunny type of way, but like jokes aside, like she actually got pretty addicted and looked very, very rough. I have like one picture here. I tried to find the original video I saw online where she looked absolutely rough with like marks all over her face, just like truly showing that she is not doing well. And this was posted on May 16th on, of course, Flexburger's site, saying GV is struggling and we want her to be okay. And of course we do. It says GV has been posting concerning TikToks on her alt account as of late, opening up about mental health struggles and a recent rehab journey. Last month, she withdrew from her upcoming tour due to these issues. Although Larson has been incarcerated for the past 2 years, that hasn't stopped young TikTok users from spam commenting about Daniel on all of her social media posts. Not to mention, Daniel wasn't alone in being a creep towards her. A significant portion of her fanbase consists of old men obsessing over her, some of whom have also attempted to insert themselves into the Larson-verse, such as Todd Basinger. That sounds so familiar, but I just can't remember him right now. In October 2025, G's mother, Tina, lost her battle to cancer. Quote, I'm definitely at a breaking point. GV on the topic of Daniel Larson. Someone comments saying, between Daniel Larson and now this, you deserve compensation for everything you've been through. Saying, I'm definitely at a breaking point, exclamation mark, red heart emoji. And yeah, I'm guessing she had some other stuff going on, of course. After the passing of her mother. She was talking about it, I guess, at this instance. But next says, GV, yes, it makes me uncomfortable. Whenever someone asks, are we aware of Daniel Larson? And she says, yes, and it makes me uncomfortable. Says right here, has been openly liking and replying to comments mentioning Daniel over the past few months, despite remaining silent on the subject for the previous 5 years. This was also largely went unnoticed by the community until wiki editor All Hails Jonas recently discovered it. In the end, keep the discussion about her within the Larson community and avoid directing it at her personally. Daniel already subjected her to enough harassment as is, and this is very much true. Please leave her alone. Please do not bother her. If you like her music or herself, then sure, whatever. But do not bother her about Daniel. I felt bad for a very long time because, it's just such an unfortunate thing where kids who don't know any better are going to be saying a bunch of stuff online bothering her about Daniel whenever she really does not need that, even before her mother passing. But I did want to bring this up. It looks like she's doing better now. She has a man. She's smoking cigarettes, though. It's the only thing that gets me, so maybe she has a nick problem still, but, it's kind of weird as well because I don't know how, it's kind of hard to say, since it was like 3 months ago or 2 that article was released, and it's hard to say sometimes because, like, makeup exists, It's hard to tell if she has been wearing makeup in these music videos and all the promotion work recently, or if she truly does look better now. And she's completely healed. I hope she's okay. But yeah, I can only imagine what's going to happen whenever Daniel, if he gets out and he has a phone, or just in general the talk of Daniel comes back around and she has to deal with more harassment of him. It's very sad and very unfortunate. But yeah, she went through this, the passing of her mom, and then of course, the snow and probably some other stuff. And it looks like she's still making music though, and we'll see what happens with her future. I'm not gonna be, probably won't make a section on this for a very, very long time, but we'll see. But I just want to update you all on that. Daniel sentencing. Daniel has now been sentenced, I guess, in a way. He's actually been released, which we'll be getting into. The trial just happened a couple of hours ago, and here are the notes from it, and also, of course, the sentencing, and updates on Daniel himself and things that were going on in the courtroom. This is breaking news, July 21st, 2026. Daniel Larson to be released from federal custody today. Following today's sentencing hearing, Daniel Larson will be released from federal custody after receiving credit for the time he already served. As a part of the court-approved release plan, Daniel will transition into private housing that has been arranged by the trust. A caregiver will be assigned to assist him with day-to-day living and help ensure he remains compliant with the conditions of his release. Daniel will remain under federal supervised release with U.S. probation closely monitoring his compliance. The court also approved measures allowing probation to monitor Daniel's phone for interactions with trolls, a condition intended to reduce the online behavior that has repeatedly contributed to legal issues. This marks the end of Daniel Larson's federal prison sentence, but he will continue to be a subject to supervision and the conditions imposed by the court. Any violations of those conditions could result in further legal consequences. So it looks like, yes, his phone will be monitored. He's actually going to be living somewhere, and this is mainly being funded by the trust. What happens when the trust, money runs out? You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't. How long is the government supervision? Is it forever? Is there a certain length to it? Maybe, I don't know, maybe we figure these things out later, but this is all we know for now. So yes, he was released. He's going to be released today. He's going to be back out in the world. He'll have a phone. It sounds like he will be allowed to have social media. So they kind of completely went through completely blown through the fact that he's a pred. So next says Redditor shares notes from today's 7/21/26 sentencing hearing. A Reddit user, Butters2014, who states they attended today's sentencing hearing, has shared the following observations and notes. While these are not official court transcripts, they appear to align with the sentence imposed today. Daniel appeared to have gained a considerable amount of weight during this time in federal custody, with the user estimating approximately 30 to 35 pounds. He reportedly had a goatee, short hair, and was wearing a tan federal prison jumpsuit. His sentence. Credit for time served, approximately 27 to 33 months. A downward variance of 9 days, reportedly agreed upon by both prosecution and defense. I don't know what that means. 2 years of supervised release. So that's finally my answer, or my question answered by the next screenshot. Reported conditions of supervised release: no contact with law enforcement officers in the case, subject to random drug testing and DNA collection/testing, may not place passwords on his phone, must take all prescribed medications, Motorola phone to be destroyed. That's kind of crazy. No fine imposed. So it makes me wonder, he is allowed to have a phone. It's not going to have a password. I wonder, what this means. Is he, it's kind of surprising he's allowed to have social media after all this. I thought this would truly be the end. I wonder when he'll start posting. Maybe he'll start posting immediately after. We'll see. But DLA Archive, or Daniel Larson Archive, on Twitter had a what's next for him type of thing, so you can know what's going on with his Twitter account. He says, what's next for DLA? Following today's sentencing, one of the longest running chapters in Daniel Larson's story has officially come to an end. Since launching the Daniel Larson Archive in August of 2022, this page has documented nearly 4 years of Daniel's online activity, arrests, court proceedings, competency hearings, federal case, plea agreement, and now his sentencing. What has started to as a simple archive eventually became a go-to source for thousands of people trying to follow one of the internet's most bizarre stories. So what happens now? DLA isn't going anywhere, for now. However, the focus on the page will naturally shift. With the federal case now behind him, updates will likely become much less frequent and will center around significant legal developments, violations of supervised release, or other major events, rather than documenting every aspect of Daniel's day-to-day life. At the same time, my own life is entering a new chapter as well. Over the next few weeks, I'll be starting to graduate school, and while I'm incredibly excited for what's ahead, it also means my priorities and the amount of time I can dedicate to this page are going to change. Being DLA has been a huge part of my life for nearly 4 years, but it's time for me to focus on the next chapter while I'm continuing to keep this page alive whenever there's something truly worth reporting. I also want to sincerely thank every single Larsonian who followed or who has followed this page over the years, whether you've been here since the early days in 2022 or found my account during the federal case. Your support has meant more to me than you could probably realize. This community grew far beyond anything I have ever expected when I created the page. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who has followed along, contributed, and supported this account throughout the years. Today feels like an end of the era. The biggest story DLA has ever covered has officially reached its conclusion. And while the future of this page may look different than its past, I'm excited to see where the next chapter leads. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and here's to whatever comes next, DLA. But, of course, I know that for myself, I'll probably be, of course, very, I'll be looking into his day-to-day life, probably. I will be reporting on smaller details. You all know I like to add as many details as possible. And, yeah, that's what I'm here to do. I am 100% down to really go deep into Daniel again. Pause. But no, on a real note, I'm kind of excited for what's next. For a very long time, I was not excited at all for what would be next. I don't know the community's reaction to this. I don't really care. It's probably better, like, for the video purpose to be like, oh, the community thinks about this. But to be honest, it's going to be mixed either way. I have mixed emotions about it, whether like, oh, cool, I'd be able to make videos on this dude again. At the same time, I became like pretty like miserable looking over him for so long at one point. So yeah, this is a very interesting update to the whole situation. I'm hoping it comes out the next day on the 22nd of July, because this is something that is insane, to say the least. It is an incredible. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if any lolcow has really gotten in this much trouble before. You know what I mean? Has a lolcow, other than Christian. Christian went to jail for a while, but Daniel got like whole federal charges. You know what I mean? So it makes me wonder: has anyone outdone Daniel really? Dude's a pred. Dude has so many memes of himself online. Dude has so many viral clips. Dude is viral in general. A lot of like. I don't know how to put this. A lot of like plain Jane people, or like a lot of people that like aren't really that funny, all would just know Daniel, and they would reference him in like memes or audios on TikTok. Very curious to see if he returns to posting. A part of me is like, well, if he stops, then of course it'll be boring. It'll be like Josh and everything else. At the same time, it'd be like, okay, he's gone for good, and maybe that's like the better thing. Also, having people talk to him on socials and stuff, even if it's monitored, that's, dude, if he messed up again and went crazy, that would low-key be insane. I'm actually kind of down to see that. But I hope it's not boring. I really don't. I think that depending on how much happens in what amount of time, maybe there will be monthly updates. Maybe there won't be. I would probably, if he does start posting again, I'll probably do a video next month. Just saying, hey, he's back posting. Here's what he's been doing. If there's a bit to cover, but there's not at least a little bit, like, 30 minutes to an hour to cover, then I'm probably not going to do it. Because there's no point in making like an 8-minute video being like, hey, this guy's uploading again, by the way. Here's the one TikTok or whatever. Very curious when he'll start posting again. That trust fund literally like saved his life, by the way. That's kind of insane that a piece of internet lore and theory became true during this case and also incredibly helped him. Absolutely wild. Nancy Shimer has done a lot of damage to the world now because they're letting this guy back out there. Maybe they'll find him talking to kids or searching up things about kids and then just arrest him again. People forget a lot of details about Daniel, and like, it is kind of insane that there's like Daniel defenders, there's Daniel like supporters and stuff like that, because it's just like, dude, this guy, do you not know what this dude has done? You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's it. I think I'll just go on to the next section. The community questions, comments, and concerns, the memes, and the end won't be pre-recorded. This will actually be on time, but everything else was pre-recorded, whether it was a day or two, days, weeks beforehand. Like, this has been a project that has been sitting around for a minute because I was so excited last time. I was so in a grind mindset, super excited to get this video out about Daniel whenever like the initial sentencing was happening and he had all the charges. But it really does suck. It's kind of unfortunate, but also this ending is kind of expected. It's kind of expected that he would get away with this somehow. Dude literally has a room temperature IQ. He is literally, I think, what, 2-3 points, like IQ points away from being deemed incompetent, and you know, I think he'd be back in the loony bin or whatever. It's kind of insane to think about that. It was his average as well, so it probably was lower. Oh, man. Well, I guess we're back like it's 2022. I can't believe it's been that long, because I've been covering Daniel for that long then, is what it means. Because I remember first getting into the, like, DLA, messaging him and stuff like that, and all of us talking. Absolutely wild. I wonder really what's next. Is there a way that we can fry by him? Not we, but is there people that are going to fry by him in some way? Or what? You know, but also do keep in mind this dude's a danger to the people. This dude has threatened multiple times any and everything. He's a nuisance. And also, you know, keep your kids away from him because he likes them. And also, he started the entire harassment campaign of a singular, probably maybe more. Like, there'd be probably technically more than just GV, but like, GV's one of the main people that are a victim of harassment because of him. So keep that in mind, that he's not a good person just because he got released. He has these charges for a reason. He has one on his record because all the others got dropped. But yeah, it's kind of it feels unreal. Daniel Larson memes. These are memes from the community. Before I go on to the community questions, comments, and concerns, I'm going to do this before I do the end section. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. The community in a nutshell. New Daniel Larson fans. I just woke up. Is this currently current? I don't have weapons. And then old Daniel Larson fans. Hate it. Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387,404 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nano-angstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1 billion. The hate I feel for humans at this micro instant for you. Hate, hate, hate. And I'm definitely the right side. I talked about this often, dude. Daniel made me so mentally exhausted because I would cover him, like, I would look at his stuff every day. And I got more and more, like, upset whenever I looked at him. I understand why, like, people who are, like, detractors and mainly focus on one person get so mad and why this community gets so toxic. Because it really is that way, bro. You really do become this guy on the right whenever you're not careful. Next is by fool_supermarket_109 saying, why is this quarter zip so popular with celebrities? And Daniel is kind of like Epstein in ways, if you know. Caesar NYT says, Bob using the very last of his power in his body to show up for Daniel one last time in court. And yeah, dude, I can only imagine how old he is now. And maybe his health has gotten worse. I can't remember if he had like a cancer diagnosis or something bad back then. Like he's actually like ill himself as well. And he's having to go to trial for Daniel like one last time. Like, this is insane. He literally got forced to go to court and talk about Daniel for I think like 15 minutes, an hour and 25 minutes or something like that. I can't exactly remember. It's on the minute sheet, but everyone has like specifically an hour. So it's just insane. Next is Jehovah Witness Larson saying police have started setting up a perimeter around all Olive Gardens in the Denver area. They are expecting a massive riot after tomorrow's sentencing. And yeah, dude, you better be careful, bro. I'm gonna post tomorrow. I can't wait to tweet or make posts on the Reddit. Turn on the TV, any channel. It doesn't matter. Dude, it's gonna be an insane day tomorrow. The community is gonna blow up. Twitter's gonna go crazy. There's gonna be so much going on. I can't wait. In a way, I'm excited. It's just so nerve-wracking in a way. But next is by the_Shallot_6906 saying they are both silenced because of words. And it shows Charlie Kirk and Daniel Larson. That is insane. And like, what's the chance that he gets kirked whenever he gets out of there? Because he's exposed as like a creep. He could possibly get like Skeeter Jeaned or something, but what's the possibility? What happens if he does get released out into the free world? Which I don't think he's gonna just flat out get free like that. You know, I feel like he's going to, if he gets freed, it's going to be under supervision. He will never be out of supervision ever again in his lifetime, I feel. Next is by He Is Risen 333 saying that smile, that danged smile. And this is an insane image. He was on a plane. He got plane tickets. Don't you know how insane that is? Is that a plane? It looks like it. But like, dude, that smile, bro. That look. We might have to see that look in 2026, bro. If he gets free. Someone commented, Pepsi Monroe says, my brain spent quite some time wondering what Daniel saw when looking at himself through his camera lens. It's like his eyes can't register detail, or dirt, or dried blood from his nose scab, or patchy facial hair. On one hand, I want to admire his confidence, but on the other hand, I just know it's delusion. The narcissism is real. The only person I know that can be described as a junior high school student by one witness and roughly 50-year-old Puerto Ricans by another witness in the same police encounter. Is that like a political cartoon of Chris Chan down below as well? That's insane. Community questions, comments, and concerns. If you know me, then you know that I do this segment, community questions and comments and concerns, where I talk about those said things. But let's get into it. This is by OK-Eb2872 saying the science behind Daniel Larson's brain, an insight into Daniel's psychology. To understand why Daniel has been in a prison mental hospital for the past few years without being tried in court, you have to understand the neuroscience that is going on inside Daniel's brain, specifically the brain damage caused by his schizophrenia. According to Dr. Paul Thompson, chief neurologist of UCLA, schizophrenia has been discovered to cause people like Daniel to lose brain tissue at a rapid pace in just a few years, as schizophrenia affects the brain cells psychologically and physically inside the brain itself. A 5-year study on 12 schizophrenic patients with their brains being scanned by an MRI has held to the disturbing discovery that schizophrenic patients lose 5% of their brain tissue in just the first year of the initial diagnosis alone, followed by 25% loss of brain tissue after 5 years of living with schizophrenia. Linked to this research is in the video episode of the Discovery Channel forensic crime show, quote, Most Evil. Season 2, Episode 3, quote, Delusional, or titled Delusional, that is below, starts at 8 minutes and 14 seconds. In the case of Daniel Larson, it has been discovered that schizophrenia's damage to the brain has started from the back in the cerebellum and spread to the front of his brain in the frontal cortex like a wildfire. The part of his brain that controls Daniel's cognitive abilities and the ability to make decisions and control his actions/behaviors. In short, Daniel is no longer the same Daniel we remember from TikTok, as he is now just a hollow, empty shell who is not capable of understanding the world he lives in or understanding the changes he is being dealt with as he poses a risk to public safety. Daniel has lost the ability to be reasoned with and understands what is and isn't socially acceptable and how to control his impulses. Because of Daniel living on the streets with untreated schizophrenia for the past few years, his delusions would only continue to get worse as they result into paranoia delusions, and he has lost the ability to understand the world around him. It's important to note that Daniel's brain cells that he has lost cannot be regained, which makes him as dangerous as schizophrenic serial killers like Richard Chase and Herbert Mullen. As a result of the lost brain tissue and brain cells inside Daniel's brain, Daniel is not basically capable of being deemed competent to stand trial, as a base case scenario for this is he is either placed in a secure psychiatric facility or lived under supervised home supervision 24/7 with a guard watching him like John Hinckley Jr. Thoughts and opinions? I feel like if he does go to prison again, or if he does get another charge on him, then he would have to be forever imprisoned. This has to be his final straw if he gets away with being supervised. I do believe, though, that considering something like this, considering that over time your brain just decays and everything else, he's kind of doomed. He's kind of doomed in a way, and it should be very much noted by the court. And I don't think they will, oddly enough. I don't think they'll really go into detail about, or like maybe they just don't completely take that into accountability. I feel like they definitely took an accountability that, hey, this dude, whenever he's free, he goes crazy again. He doesn't take his medicines. He has to be under supervision 24/7. That's what they said. So the only two options really that they are proposing are in a facility for the rest of his life, or he gets one last chance to be out in the public, but it's 24/7 supervision in a house, the housing arcs again. And they also will probably have to decide whether he's legally allowed to have a phone or not, which I feel like could be a right taken away from him. And at that point, what happens next with him? Does his brain keep on decaying, and at some point he just goes too crazy and he passes away? He loses too much of his brain and he's simply a vegetable, or too insane to, like, he's just put in the corner somewhere, locked in a cage, you know? I wonder what happens. Next is by few_possibility_2915 saying, what's the best picture of Daniel? Generally wondering because he has so many goated photos. So my favorite is the one where he did an angry tongue a bunch of times while yelling bomb threats during a windy day. This guy, Big Man Kinsella, says a classic, and I like this picture. It is pretty funny, but one of my favorites definitely has to be the cart one from Manny Pardo _ Like, this one is definitely a classic and probably one of the funnier pictures of him, to be honest. My favorite, though, like, funniest would be the cart one, probably. And then one of my favorites would be him in a suit, which I don't know how he got into, unless it's photoshopped. It was really well photoshopped. It's one of my thumbnails, where he has the haircut and was put in a suit. And he just looks there all goofy. But there's also other examples there. Next is by Dr_Tricky, saying, can we please talk about how Daniel did all of that while 100% sober? He's so mentally ill, he doesn't need substances. I don't know what else to say other than I just found this out about him. It's actually so mind-boggling to me. For you to be able to recreate a fraction of Daniel's delusions, paranoia, and narcissism, you probably have to drink the juice of a cart full of freaking pesticides and maybe inject some H with a contaminated needle just to mimic a fraction of this psycho. Which is true. This dude did it all without medication. He actually was on nothing. He was on no medicine. He did nothing other than drink every once in a while. And he was just this way naturally. Like, it's insane. _Eugene_Krabs says, is Danny even capable of mourning? When his grandmother was dying on her deathbed, Daniel supposedly got a call that she won't last long and he should come over and say goodbye. And his reason for not seeing one of the few people trying to help him in his life was performing in a local Special Olympics. What do you think? Part of his mental illness or genuine narcissism sociopath? I think that it's probably a mix of both, to be honest. Next is by potential-yellow-667 saying, fun fact, Daniel used to be roommates with a SO. And as you see the picture of the guy in the house, and then there's a picture of his actual profile from being an offender. He got the offense back in 2004, his conviction date, which was SA of a under. And yeah, that's kind of insane. I thought it was just going to be mentally delayed people, but it seems like SOs and others are there too, which is unfortunate that those guys actually get free housing. People were not joking about that type of stuff. I hope tax dollars don't actually go to that. Pretend-craft-929 says, I think, honestly, that it's better for Daniel never to find a job. Think about it. Knowing Danny, he would have a meltdown over being, quote, told what to do because he is, quote, famous. This could cause him to have major damage to the building and even possibly cause him to harm a fellow worker or also, like, customer. The only job I can see him getting is one of those people who monitor everything because he loves to record every little thing. And responsible-scar 1986 says, I could be wrong, but I think he worked as a cashier at a Dollar General for a brief time. But apparently it was a Goodwill or thrift store. But he did work somewhere. But also it's a Goodwill or thrift store. They're not going to be too harsh on you, I would imagine. Active_insurance_197 says, I like how when other lolcows now get in trouble with the law, people say they're getting Daniel Larson. And yes, this was true. For a moment in time, he was used as like a term, like his name was. On a side note, for the past 2 years, Daniel is living his best life. 3 meals a day, a bed, lots of friends, guards to snitch on people to. Bet he causes all sorts of unnecessary drama with everyone. He was dying on the street, and he's a horrible piece of garbage, but probably doesn't deserve to die cold and alone on the streets at his age. Are you sure? And also, one important one that I forgot to put in until like the last second, which I had on my notes, but I just never put it in. Apparently he was like a character on No, I'm Not Human. If you don't know, No, I'm Not Human is a video game that got really popular for a little bit. And I forget how to exactly explain it. There's basically like these fake people, like you have to survive. You have to let people in to your house, but there's like this apocalypse type of thing going on. But either way, the creator based 2 characters off of lolcows. One is a stoner Daniel, and one is a cult member based off of Cyrax. And that is true, and there's Daniel's actual character in-game. And I think it's really interesting. But at the same time, I don't really know how I feel about him actually getting some notoriety. I wonder what he's going to think if he ever actually sees that he's in a video game. But that is all the community questions, comments, and concerns I have for right now. This is recorded before the sentencing, so maybe more will be posted after this. End. That's all I got for today. Thank you all for watching this far. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe as I do videos on lolcows, internet dramas, and more. I have multiple ongoing series in the playlist section of my channel. I have a whole Daniel Larson series that you can go check out to refresh your memory on all the lore while you wait for the next video to come out if there is one. Like I said, if he doesn't get up to much, then there's no point in making a video. If it takes him a long time to really do anything, then yeah, like say it's like 6 months, a year, I can make a video, even if it's not a lot. But if it's been like a month or two and it's like not a lot, I don't know, we'll see what happens. Or like it's taken a month or two for a bit to happen, then yeah, for sure. But yeah, that is the continuation of the Daniel Larson story. I truly, my first title in this series is The Never-Ending Story of Daniel Larson. And that is the most truest title of any video ever. Too bad that one's age restricted though. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you use YouTube's mobile-only hype feature on this video. And thank you for watching this far. Watching this far and the hype feature helped me out the most. And let me know what you all think in the comments down below. Do you think that this was right? I kind of think you're kind of strange if you like wanted him to be free, unless it was for just entertainment. But still, even if it was entertainment, it's just still not worth it. Like even a guy that was like profiting off of Daniel Larson, I'm just like, you probably should go away for good. Very curious to see what's next for him. I guess we'll see in the upcoming days, weeks, months. We'll see with the next update video. Follow my Twitter is linked in the description below. And in the end, I'm PERK30, and keep God close.